The Packers need some help up front defensively. So with the combine next week, just pick the biggest, fastest dude, right? Not so fast.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Google, wherever you get podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how, thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We have special teams candidates, at least reported candidates, to talk about. We have a Bears move to Indiana that I want to talk about, but I'm gonna relate it to the Packers in a very important way that I think you'll appreciate. Let's start with this defensive line question, because defensive tackle has been on everyone's mind. The future of Devontae Wyatt is in question. Kenny Clark out the door. The interior of this defense was by far where they were the weakest, and they've invested heavily on the edges. Whether Rashawn Gary is with the team or not, Lucas Van Ness is a former first-round pick. Micah Parsons is making Texas with a dollar sign. They like Colin Oliver. They really like Brenton Cox. So they have some players that are there on the edges. You want to improve the pass rush, it's going to have to come from the interior. You want to improve the run defense up the middle, that's going to have to come from your interior defensive line. So we'll do the whole deep dive here. But the reason I want to do this now is before the combine. Because I said, just flippantly earlier in the week, I said, this is going to be important for the Packers with the combine because they care about athletic testing when it comes to the top 3 rounds. And the top 2 especially. They are going to draft premium athletes for the most part. The one place that, if you take this back through the Ted Thompson era, but includes the inclusion of Brian Gutekunst is a little bit more questionable because he's had fewer bites at the apple. He's really just had one interior defensive lineman that he's drafted in the top 3 rounds in his time as the Packers GM. And it was an elite athlete, but it was also in the first round, a little bit different. If you go back through the Ted Thompson tree, they're not the elite of the elite athletes. In fact, most of those players had relative athletic scores in the low to mid 7s. I went back and I was trying to look for trends. And what I found was elite athleticism is not a prerequisite to be a Packers type at defensive tackle. You got to be an above average athlete in most cases. The one outlier, BJ Raji. And he was taken in the top 10, and he turned out to be a really good football player. Our pal Jeff Jagosinski over on the Squad Show coached him at BC, confirmed what I had heard when BJ Raji was coming out, that he was so good, there were times they had to stop practice or they had to kick him out of practice just so the offense could do something, because he was that dominant in practice at BC. So that was interesting to me. Now, they've also, in the top 100, never drafted with this administration a defensive tackle that weighed less than 300 pounds. So if you're one of those like 6'1", 6'2", 285 pound penetrating defensive tackle, gap shooter, pass rusher types, the Packers, at least in the early rounds, not so interested. Now, if you are a potential tackle edge hybrid on day 3, they've done that before. Like Kingsley Keke a couple of years ago. That was actually a long time ago now. They may make an exception, someone that can play a little bit on the edge, someone that can play. Dayton Jones was another guy who was like, okay, he was really a 5 technique in an odd front, but they ended up playing him as a stand-up pass rusher. Is he an interior defensive lineman if he's a 5-tech? That I don't want to have to parse those details. I consider Dayton Jones an edge because ultimately he played edge. He was not really a defensive tackle. He did play some defensive tackle in college, played some defensive tackle for the Green Bay Packers. That one gets a little tricky. If you include Dayton Jones in this, you will see the Packers going back to 2007, so over the last almost 20 years, they've taken a fair number of first-round picks at defensive tackle. And if you just go back here over the last few years, since 2012, a second-round pick in 2012, a third-round pick in 2014, a first-round pick in 2016, a third-round pick in 2017, and then a first-round pick on Devontae Wyatt in 2022. The only reason there's a gap between 17 and 22 is because Kenny Clark was awesome through all of that. So you could just sort of cycle in some of the day 3 guys and throw them in there. The thing that I was shocked by when I went through and looked at this was relative athletic score certainly was one of them where I was like, I remember Kenny Clark being a better athlete than that. I remember Jarrell Worthy being a better athlete than that. I remember hearing at least that Justin Harrell was a better athlete than that. He had 706 relative athletic score, Jarrell Worthy 7.6, Kenny Clark 7.55, Montravius Adams 7.87. Adams, one of those that Ted Thompson was right about, just not with the Packers. Turned into a really good football player, not in Green Bay. But you don't have to be an elite athlete to be a defensive tackle for the Green Bay Packers, and that is worth noting here. You don't just have to say, okay, it's only normally I would say in the first round, if they don't have an 8.5 relative athletic score or higher, which is, remember, that's a composite athletic score. It's size, it's speed, it's athleticism, it's all the things together. We don't know that the Packers use RAS. They probably don't. But they have said they have metrics, they have models that they use. It is got to be similar to relative athletic score because the trends in the data say they prioritize premium position athletes or premium athletes early on. And for them, defensive tackle, certainly a premium position. Big people, they subscribe to world theory. There are only so many people in the world who move like these big people do. So you got to be over 300 pounds. Now that's not going to winnow too many of these guys down. But what I thought was interesting is the only person they drafted in the top 100, the only D tackle that they drafted in the top 100 over 6 or 6'4" or higher was Justin Harrell back in 2007. Everybody else, BJ Raji 6'1", Jarrell Worthy 6'2", Kyrie Thornton 6'2". Yeesh, that was one of the all-time Ted Thompson misses. Kenny Clark is only 6'2.5". Montravius Adams, 6'3.5". Devontae Wyatt, 6'3". And I wonder about this. Like, they do view offensive linemen as too tall. They want, if they draft a tackle, they want to be able to fail you into guard. And if you're 6'7", that just gets really hard. Now, there's not that same sort of functionality for defensive tackles, because taller defensive tackles could play defensive end. But what I wonder is, do they think there is some sort of leverage advantage here? A little bit shorter, you're not as likely to stand straight up. You may be sacrificing some length. They're not length. Like they're not. I was trying to find something that was not going to be inappropriate, and I could not find the right phrasing where it's not going to make you go phrasing. Arm length is not something that they go crazy about. So, because Jarrell Worthy had short arms, they have had a varied profile here. And as you look at some of these players that could be available to the Packers in that, second, third round, some of the players that we've already talked about and players that I still think we need to keep an eye on when it comes to the combine. Lee Hunter, 6'4", 320. Now, I don't think if he's 6'4", that is disqualifying for him. I think it's actually more important that he's 320. Because if he were 295, there might be some questions about it. And by the way, if he's listed at 6'4", there's a decent chance he's actually 6'3" and change, which could make him the perfect Packers defensive tackle. But Darrell Jackson is a more interesting case. He's 6'5", 330. They don't generally take guys that are 330. BJ Raji is the outlier. Usually they'd like them 314 and below. A little bit shorter, but you still get the mass because if you're 310 at 6'2", 6'5", 320, it's about the same. But maybe you think there's a leverage advantage there. So I don't know if Darrell Jackson will be as appealing. Dominique Orange from Iowa State. He's 6'4", 325. Certainly big enough, but again, 325, that would be big for them early on. They've taken big people before. TJ Slayton was a big boy, but that was day 3. So if what you're trying to get in the early rounds is a pass rusher, do you want to take a nose tackle this high? I frankly don't think you do. You want to only take a player, a defensive tackle, that you think is really going to give you some pass rush. Now, lower on this Dane Brugler top 100 list, Chris McClellan is 6'3", 315. That is sort of the platonic ideal. Went to Missouri, so played in the SEC. That's sort of right in the mold of the kind of player that they like. Rayshawn Benny, 6'4", 305. That might even be a little too skinny, but if he's really 6'3" and change, 305, then he's basically Devontae Wyatt. I mean, that's almost exactly what he was. That's almost exactly, if he's 6'3" and change, 305, that's Montravius Adams. So those are things to keep in mind as we go through the combine, that don't go, oh, well, they're not an elite athlete, they can't be a Green Bay Packer. At defensive tackle, that's not true. Now, speaking of candidates, we move from candidate players to candidate coaches. We have some reporting around special teams interviews for the Green Bay Packers. We'll talk about those next. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds an extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick cash, but you can go to the NBA Finals too. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The offseason doesn't exist for the Everydayer Club. Join the group talk, the group text, the group chat. I don't know why I said the group talk. What is that? And get every episode of Locked On Packers ad-free. Head to lockedonpackers.supercast.com to learn more and, of course, to sign up. So we have candidates. We have candidates for the special teams job. And one of the questions, speaking of our Everydayer Club, that I got in the group chat yesterday was, can the Packers actually find someone? Like, is there someone out there in the hire? Is it too late to find someone who's decent? And my answer is, it is too late to get the best candidate. But that does not mean it is too late to upgrade on Rich Bisaccia. So from a process standpoint, certainly suboptimal, certainly not the best situation you could hope for. But that doesn't mean that you can't find a coach, that can improve your team relative to what Rich Bisaccia was giving you. And Bill Huber was all over the reporting on this. Has a bunch of 3 names to offer here when it comes to special teams coordination, and they're all interesting to me. The first name that he reported used to coach the number 1 special teams group in the NFL. Now, that was a long time ago. Cameron Acord, I believe is how you say his name, used to be the special teams coach for the New England Patriots. And he was promoted into that job after Joe Judge became the head coach of the New York Giants in a wonderfully failed experiment. And in his first year, Acord was the number one special teams unit in the NFL as rated by Rick Gosselin, who is the special teams guru when it comes to the power rankings. There is only one power ranking that matters when it comes to special teams. By the way, the coaches, it's one of the few that the coaches actually know because they trust Rick Gosselin. And that's pretty good. Now, it has not been great since then. And the Patriots fell off over time. He was not retained by Gerard Mayo. But he was someone who was interesting to me. Is there's a bunch of quotes in the piece that Bill did from Matthew Slater, who is basically the great, not even basically, I don't know why I'm couching. He's the greatest non-kicker punter special teams player of his generation. Why not call Matthew Slater? But I think you can do worse than rating Bill Belichick's special teams, because Joe Judge, for whatever issues he had as a head coach, was a very good special teams coordinator. And special teams is one of those things where it's all about detail. It's all about effort. And while I don't think you can recreate the Belichick way, the Patriot way elsewhere, the effort and the detail part is something that's translatable. And I think Mike Vrabel is proving that right now, because he had that in Tennessee and he has it again in New England. Now, and by the way, I tweeted this out, so I have receipts on this. The next coach that Bill Huber reported is going to get an interview here is a former player, a former linebacker, Kyle Wilbur. And not only is he a former linebacker, by the way, a former Oakland Raider, I believe, not just a Vegas Raider. I would have to, double check my sources on that. But he also worked for Rich Bisaccia in Green Bay as a special teams QC. Normally, I would say I just don't think it is reasonable or possible to give a promotional hire. By the way, I double checked. Kyle Wilbur did play in Oakland before they moved to Las Vegas. But this is someone who is a longtime special teams player. We're not talking about just some dork they pulled off the street to be a QC and learn special teams from Rich Bisaccia. We're talking about someone who did this in the NFL as their job for a long, long time. Not just some whatever guy. We're talking about someone who had a lengthy NFL career, played 10 years in the NFL, and started just 17 games. He was a backup. He made his bones as a special teams player. So if they were going to take someone who had been on Rich Bisaccia's staff, and again, normally I would have been I don't know if that's the path you want to take. I don't know, Jim. I don't know. This is actually interesting to me. Because, I can't talk out of both sides of my mouth, right? If I thought Matthew Slater was an interesting choice, one of the greatest special teams players of his generation, then someone who was an NFL special teamer, a core player for 10 seasons in the NFL, and then is also coached in Green Bay, that continuity, I do think, is valuable to the Packers. The third candidate that was reported is Tom McMahon, who replaced Rich Bisaccia with the Raiders in 2022. So this is kind of weird. Wilbur played in Vegas, then coached under Rich Bisaccia. And then they're also looking at the guy who replaced Rich Bisaccia. Why are there so many Raiders ties? I don't know. But McMahon is someone who has been a coordinator for a long, long, long time. Actually coached with Jonathan Gannon at Louisville a long time ago, and might have been someone that Jonathan Gannon recommended to Matt LaFleur. But this is someone who has been a special teams coordinator since the Rams were in St. Louis. So we're talking about since 2009, he's been coordinating and helping to coordinate defenses. He was the special teams coordinator in Las Vegas last year. Pete Carroll fired him in the middle of the year. So, that's not the best. That's not the best. But that team was a you-know-what show. So it's not like, you can just put everything on Tom McMahon, excuse me. I might as well have said Vince McMahon. Another name that was reported is Matthew Smiley. Matthew Smiley from the Bills. Another not like the longest time coach. He's only been coaching special teams since 2013, so not quite as long as McMahon. But he was actually an offensive coordinator, a running backs coach, and special teams coordinator in college. So he's been someone that's been, coaching special teams for a long time. He was an assistant special teams coordinator when Sean McDermott was hired in 2017. And in 2025, so last year, they moved on from Smiley. So again, at this point in the process, you're talking about coaches that have been moved on from, that have been fired, that are less wanted. They're not going out and seeking out, okay, here's the high-level assistant coach, like, Dustin Fitzsimmons, Jet Motkin, some of the guys we've talked about. Doesn't mean they won't get to those guys. But clearly Matt LaFleur had a list ready to go. Because within 48 hours of us finding out, less than that, within 24 hours really, of us finding out Rich Bisaccia was, I guess, what's the date? Thursday, Tuesday, we found out Tuesday night. So yeah, 48 hours. We got a list of potential interviewees. Now, the Packers probably knew they had to get hopping, but also, do they? Like, at this point, the hires have been made. I think they probably knew for a couple days at least that they knew this was coming and they needed to go make some interviews. The fact that they already have a comprehensive list tells you that they've been thinking about this. And I think they were trying to go through the Rolodex. Who do we know? Who do we think is good? Those kinds of questions. It is not the most impressive list I've ever seen, to be sure. Frankly, my favorite option is the former player that was in Green Bay. Not because, being in Green Bay imbues him with some special fairy dust, but because he did the job. He presumably knows some of these players, a lot of these players, because he was in Green Bay just a year ago. And so there's a built-in rapport there. And Rich Bisaccia was a well-liked coach, so he steps down. You have this guy, and he's got the gravitas. As a former player, I like that in a special teams coach, because special teams coaches have to be maniacs. And if you played special teams for 10 years in the NFL, you're a maniac. And so right now, of this group, that's the guy that is most intriguing to me. And it has, frankly, very little to do. I don't want to say nothing, because it's not nothing, but it's very little to do with the fact that he coached in Green Bay. I think the continuity is nice. But in the case of special teams, like I like a former player in a situation like this. It doesn't, like, former players can sometimes make very bad coaches. I don't think that way with special teams. I really don't, because it's really just about effort, technique. It's not as much about X's and O's. And so I'm interested to see where this goes from here, and some of the names that keep going here. I want to end this talking about why I never want to hear anyone from Chicago, Chicagoland, Lake Geneva, Kenosha, any Bears adjacent people. I don't want to hear about the stock sale with the Packers ever again. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which might just be sleepers. The board is set. The flavors are ready. And only one is going to take the top spot. 5-Hour Energy has a lot of flavor innovations planned. And I'm telling you, the Hawaiian Breeze. I wanted a tropical drink. Sometimes you just need, I was at the hospital yesterday, being as supportive as I could be. And I had a passion fruit candy. And that just transports you to a place. It takes you to a place. The Hawaiian Breeze 5-Hour Energy has passion fruit in it. Orange, guava. It's sweet but smooth, tangy but tart. That's what you want. You want to feel like you're having a drink on the beach. You get that little caffeine boost as well. Find your new favorite flavor of 5-Hour Energy shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. I'm going to lean forward for this. If you can see me on YouTube, you've seen I've leaned forward in my chair for this one. I hear from Bears fans. Surprising, I know. And what I hear often is about, well, I hear a lot of, I can't repeat some of the things that I hear often, frankly, from Bears fans. But I hear this from NFC North fans all the time about the stupid Packer fans who think they're owners because they have the piece of paper, and aren't they losers for thinking that they're owners and for paying money and just to have a worthless piece of paper. The state of Indiana is trying to poach the Chicago Bears from the state of Illinois. The Chicago Bears could move to like Industrial Park, Indiana, because Illinois is not playing ball with the money that they want, because they can't stay downtown Chicago anymore. I guess they've already put tens of millions into the Arlington location. You know, they're going to be the Lake Forest Bears there, but that's a different issue. Not that big a deal, honestly. The reason this happens, the reason Packer fans have stock certificates on their wall, is because they know that the Lambeau renovations are coming out of their pocket. They're not putting that money on the taxpayers. The people who want to pay for Lambeau Field, who want to pay for renovations to the Hall of Fame, those people are paying. Not people who could not care less. It is only the people who are willing to part with their hard-earned American currency to have a piece of paper on the wall that says Green Bay Packers on it. And those people are the people that keep the Packers in Green Bay. That will always keep the Packers in Green Bay. Because if there's a dick measuring contest around the team, around Lambeau, around lease agreements and you know, fair use and all these things. And by the way, Mark Murphy has set up the team spectacularly to move in the future, to be profitable, to not have to worry about stuff like that. Guess what? If the Packers need money, guess what they'll do? They'll sell some more stock. And guess what will happen? Packer fans everywhere will buy it. And I can't tell you how many times I meet a Packer fan somewhere, I run into them, whether they know me or not, whether they know the show or not, they say, I have my stock certificate on the wall. I'm a Packers fan. When I meet people from Wisconsin, when I'm traveling, I'm from Wisconsin. Oh, you're a Packer fan? Yep, I've got my stock on the wall. That's like one of the first things they say. Oh, you find out they're from Wisconsin. Oh, you're Packer fans. Boom, I've got my stock on the wall. It is a point of pride. And I know there are a lot of Bears fans that don't want to see the team move to Indiana, even though it's going to be closer than the other location for a lot of people. It's actually closer to downtown Chicago than the other location. They don't want it in Indiana. They want it in Illinois. It says, when they sing that stupid, insipid, ridiculous song, Illinois is in the song. The pride of Illinois is in the song. They could be singing Bear Down, Chicago Bears in freaking Indiana, man. I know Bears fans are sick over this and they're acting like they're not, but they're sick over it. And I have a smile on my face because I know that's not going to happen in Green Bay. And you know how I know that? Because there are thousands of people around this great country of ours that have framed pieces of paper on their wall that say Green Bay Packers. And that means the Green Bay Packers will always be the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay, at least until the aliens come and decide that we belong to them now. And then, the stock sale is probably not going to work after that. And we can ask. Try and negotiate. Get Russ Ball on it. He might find a way. I don't want to hear from Bears fans about the stock ever. If your team goes to Indiana, you are I never, ever allowed to talk about the stock sale again, ever. And like this is before the acknowledgement that people just flatly do not understand how it works, why it works, what it is. And they could never. They just like, it's one of those things where if you know, if you are a Packer fan, you know what it means. You know what it means to have that piece of paper. You know what it means to support your team in that way. And it is telling that the other fans, Bears fans, that they don't get it because they don't have the same relationship to their team that you have to yours, that Packer fans have to the Green Bay Packers. There is nothing in sports like the relationship that Packer fans have to the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers should not exist. They should not have happened. They should have moved to Milwaukee 100 years ago. But they didn't. And they didn't because of the special relationship between the fans and the team. The Green Bay Packers should not have happened, but they did, and they have, and they will continue to because of the support from things like the stock sale. And I'm sorry, no one else is going to understand it. And I am sorry because it is a special thing. And it is the kind of thing that, other people should be lucky enough to experience. But they're not. Have pity on them. Take pity on them. And they're Bears fans, Just that's enough reason for them to feel bad about themselves. All right, we are back next week. The NFL Combine is upon us. The NFL world descends on Indianapolis. I will not be there this year, unfortunately, but we will be following all of it very closely. We'll be getting reports, boots on the ground in Indy. So a lot of fun stuff to get to next week. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. Make sure you subscribe and follow wherever you get podcasts so you get the latest episodes. YouTube, when we're live, we'll be live later today. In fact, on Friday at noon Central for our Friday news dump. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. And guess what? We build our show around your questions on the Friday news dump. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NFL YouTube channel. On audio, make your second listen, Locked On NFL Draft. We had an Locked On Packers squad show last night. So plenty for you to listen to so you can always stay Locked On Packers.